Oh boy, let's see how many hate comments this is gonna get me. Before I start, I want you to know that I spend a lot of time playing the Monster Hunter franchise. I played 8 Monster Hunter titles at this point, and the least amount of time I ever spent on one was about 500 hours. When I say Monster Hunter World is the worst Monster Hunter game, this is my opinion, even though most flaws I'm about to mention are objectively true. And when I say World is the worst Monster Hunter game, that doesn't make it a bad game. The worst game out of a series of good games is still a good game. You might be wondering why I mentioned this, and that is because common sense seems to no longer be, well, common. Let's get to it. Out of the Monster Hunter titles I played, the only one I didn't like as much was World. But let's quickly go over the good things that World has brought to the table. Obviously, the graphics. They were far better than the previous Monster Hunter games, which makes sense because it was also the game that made Monster Hunter available on more powerful platforms again, since Nintendo's hardware always seems to lag behind that of its competitors. A lot of the quality of life improvements were very nice, like for example the wish list, faster gathering while walking or even running and sliding. The food was amazing thanks to the graphics. The game was also released in all regions at the same time, where before it would release in Japan before heading to the West. It made the series mainstream, which possibly allows for a bigger budget, which is a big win, and a bigger player base. Also, don't forget the chef. That was the coolest chef we ever had, an absolute goat.
That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
I consider Monster Hunter to be one of the best multiplayer experiences in gaming, which is quite the statement. This, however, does not go for Monster Hunter World, which is where we get into the bad things. See, here's why. Imagine, you and your friend both buy Monster Hunter World. You're all happy and excited because even though you never played a Monster Hunter game before, you watched Dusk's video and he said Monster Hunter is one of the best multiplayer experiences. You both start, make a hunter, do the tutorial, and one of you posts a quest. Guess what? The other cannot join. But why, Dusk? Well, that's exactly what we thought when it happened. Turns out you need to have completed the quests to proceed the story before you can join each other, which means that for the first 20 hours or so you won't be joining each other in the main quests, but at the most get some randoms in your quest, after the cutscenes of course. As far as I know, World is the only one that does this, and you become used to it after a while, and as you progress it luckily gets better, but waiting for your friends to have seen the cutscenes so many times just sucks. Another thing that most new hunters probably haven't noticed, and this one bothers me quite a bit, is that the game goes in against the formula of Monster Hunter itself. See, the games have always had this progression system of beat water monster to get materials for the water weapon. With this weapon you can defeat the fire monster so you can create the fire weapon, and so on. This partially was dropped by the lack of an elemental play and the prominence of raw damage, which was rather boring, still playable. However, this system had a function. It made sure that there was never one single weapon or one single armor set that was by far the best in all of the situations, or almost all of the situations. Otherwise you could just defeat this one monster and then you have no reason to beat any of the other ones, or to ever swap armor sets or swap weapons.
Kiss my big Springfield behind, Shelbyville! Woo! Ha ha! I am invincible! Invincible!
That wouldn't be very interesting if you ask me. But World did exactly this with the introduction of Fatalis. Yes, it was endgame, yes it was hard to unlock, but my point still stands. It goes in against the Monster Hunter formula, which is a lose in my book. And if you like variety in a game like this, then it should also be a loss in your book. It's very interesting to see that almost all the people I know that have played some of the older Monster Hunter games, even if they liked World, still say that they miss the old games because World starts to feel less like a Monster Hunter game. And that is actually factually true if you consider the amount of time actually smacking the monster into oblivion, or just nuking them like Rurikhan would. It makes sense that people say this. So many factors have been added that you do a lot of what I like to call gimmick managing. See, first you put on a mantle, then you might ride the monster, then you put down a booster, then you put on your second mantle, and while you're doing this you're shooting your slinger ammo at the monster. What I'm trying to say is there's more time managing and less time actually smashing the monsters.
Nice.
This creates for a less engaging experience. Negative armor skills. This is what made set building rewarding. This took skill. This made making armor sets so much more rewarding. World ditched it for a more accessible, read boring system that has no engagement at all. You just pick what you want. It was kinda like going from a fine dinner.
Don Homer, I have baked a special donut just for you.
Grazie.
to an all-you-can-eat buffet for cavemen.
So you like donuts, eh? Well, have all the donuts in the world!
We like to all do something dirty from time to time, but in general I would say we all prefer the nice dinner in general. I surely do. As a personal point, I would like to bring up Alatreon, or however you pronounce it. And this is very personal because I know that that's just me. See, they changed this monster's fight completely and the old Alatreon was my favorite. Why? Capcom, why did you have to change it? Why not just give us a new monster with this exact fight? Anyways, regardless of my personal gripes with this monster, it had another problem, which is RNG weapons. When Kulftaroth came out, you would get weapons from this fight, and those were random. Now, in and of itself, that is an awful thing to happen in a game where weapons play such a big role, but it gets worse than that. Those weapons were also the meta for elemental builds, and guess what? Alatreon has an elemental threshold you need to meet to prevent it from killing you with its Nova attack. Yay, grind Kulftaroth. I highly doubt that a majority of the people found RNG weapons a good idea, and if they do, then they really should consider game design and analyze it a bit more, because this was an awful design choice. If you thought all my points were personal, then I have a final one for you. Monster Hunter World introduced microtransactions.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
To the Monster Hunter franchise. And I know, it was inevitable, I agree, but it still happened in World. Alright, so these were all my points on why I think that Monster Hunter World was the worst Monster Hunter game. Like I said before, it's still a good game. In fact, I'm playing through it for a second time and I love the experience. I still put hundreds of hours in it. It's still a good game. It's just the worst out of the franchise. Now, the reason I put this video out is because obviously they announced Monster Hunter Wilds.
It only took 40 years.
Which is coming out in 2025. I actually have some interesting videos coming about that, which I haven't seen anybody else talk about yet, any other YouTubers, which kind of surprises me. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and bring back negative armor skills.